Today, we're going to be discussing all the documents that you need for your mortgage application. Hello, welcome back to our channel and podcast. My name is Gemma, and here at WIS we talk about all things relating to money, mortgages and positive money mindset. So if that interests you, then be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the thumbs up. It really helps with our YouTube algorithm and it means that you won't miss out on any of our videos. On today's episode of Let's Talk Money and Mortgages, we have Ifti joining us. And for those of you who don't know Ifti is a trained accountant and mortgage advisor who has been in the industry for over 11 years. And he is also one of the founding directors here at WIS. Welcome back, Ifti. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm very well, thank you. How are you, Gemma?
I'm very well, thank you. So today is another sort of popular question we get. What documents do we need to supply for our mortgage? Definitely not like a simple question to answer, is it? There's quite a few documents.
That's right. Yeah, it depends on the lender and it depends on what type of work you do. So it really varies on what type of application it is. So the documents can vary a lot, yeah.
So what we're going to do today for you all is we're going to be going through them one by one, and we will point out as we go along, if this is applicable. So we've got a section for contractors and self-employed as well. So let's get started. Okay, first document that you'll need is a copy of ID. Usually it's two forms of ID, isn't it, Ifti?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, back in the days, I think one form of ID was okay. Somebody had a passport or a driving license, it was fine. But more and more lenders are now asking for two forms of IDs. So very likely you'll need two forms of IDs. It's generally a passport and a driving license. And, most of the people who are applying for a mortgage, they'll be over 18 years. So they will have driving license as well as passports anyway. So banks will generally insist on two. I mean, there can be exceptions where people don't drive, right? So at that point, we may have to contact the bank and see, that particular bank, how they want to handle that case, right? Otherwise, usually they require two forms of IDs nowadays. Yeah, because they run certain checks on you in the background. And it's easier for them to run these checks if you have two forms of IDs.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add in here that if you are, here on a visa or ILR, then they'll also ask to see that as well, won't they, Ifti?
Yes, that's right. They'll definitely want to see that stamp on your passport that you're on a visa, or sometimes there's a visa card as well, right? So if you're on a visa, they give you a card, right? So they'll want to see a copy of that as well if you're on that, right? But yeah, so that's part of the passport.
All right, second thing we've got on the list is proof of address.
Yeah, obviously lenders like to know where you live, right? They like to see some stability, right? So if you're living in a hotel and applying for a mortgage, they're unlikely to like that, right? They like to see that you're living in a particular house and they like some stability as well, right? Because they usually say if you're moving 4 or 5 times a year, lenders generally don't like it because they think you're not very stable, right? So they will want to see your latest proof of address. Usually the proof of address is a utility bill. When I say utility bill, I'm talking about a gas bill, electricity bill, maybe water bill, council tax bill, right? So those are the ones that they are after. Some lenders might accept your bank statements as well, some don't. They say that's a different form of identification, right? So usually they want this. So if you're living with your parents and, you might want to consider putting yourself in one of those bills as well, right? Because especially things like council tax bills, they like to see your name on it, right? So it's easy for them to verify. Utility bills does not include things like mobile phone bills, right? Because some people bring their mobile phone bills and say, look, this is my mobile phone bill. I live with my parents, but I pay my mobile phone bill. But banks don't accept mobile phone bills, right? So it's generally those main utilities that they're talking about, yeah.
Thanks, Ifti. Point number 3, we've got 3 months bank statements.
That's right. So the lenders will want to see what kind of expenses you're having, whether your salary is reflected in your pay slip, those kind of things, right? So mainly your expenditure patterns, they want to find out what it is. So they will want 3 months bank statements from you, right? So it doesn't have to be like a paper form. Most of the time you can download bank statements, but please, if you're downloading, lenders will want to make sure that they see your address, they see your sort code and your account number on your bank statement. Because some banks, I know people download statements, it only shows your name, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes clients walk into one of these machines in the bank and they download a statement, right? Now that statement only has the name. For whatever reason, it doesn't have everything else, right?
Yeah.
So, you won't find sort code, account number and all the address details. Sometimes you don't find it. So we need to make sure that that is there. If not, you might have to go to the bank. With some banks I know, they don't have all this detail, right? Especially the overseas banks who have UK branches. I've seen this. They don't have all the detail. So then you may have to walk into the branch and get one of the branch officers to certify your documents, right? Saying that this is a genuine statement sort of thing, right? So we'll have to be careful. But if you have like if you work with a mainstream bank, you shouldn't have this problem because they know what is required, right? So it will be there.
Yeah, thank you, FD. Number 4, we've got credit report. That's important as well, isn't it?
Yeah. So credit report, a lot of people ask me, why do I need credit reports? You don't, right? But the problem here is nowadays lenders want you to be very accurate when you input details in your, application, right? I'll just give you an example, which will sort of highlight this, right? So if I ask the client, okay, so what's your credit card balance? They'll say it's 5,000, right? Or 2,000, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't know what the exact number is, right? But that number, 5,000, might have been now, but last month it may have been something else, right? So when the banks run a credit search, right, they see what they can find with credit reference agencies. So if there is a deviation from that real number, they do have a problem, right? Because sometimes they say that there's undisclosed credit, right? So that undisclosed credit can be a negative for your application, right? So that's why you have to be very careful. So that's why nowadays most of the banks say get the credit reports of the client and put all the details as per the credit report, because that's what we are going to be cross-checking with. So we just need to make sure that you have everything. And this is a common one too, right? People move into houses, they get a furniture loan. They go to the store and they say, you know what, you want to buy that bed, buy it 0% for 4 years. You're only paying £20 a month, right? People will like, okay, so why do I have to pay £500, £800 for the bed, whatever the number is. And then they say, okay, I'll pay £20 a month. But because it's £20, they sometimes forget it's a loan because it's not massive, right? So sometimes they forget. So that you find it in the credit file, right? So if you don't disclose that, again, that can be down as a undisclosed credit, right? Which can have negative impact on your mortgage application. So that's why this credit file is important.
Getting your mortgage online doesn't have to be complicated. At WIS, our website will help guide you through step by step. Our fully qualified advisors can help you get the most suitable mortgage for you. Then you can relax, safe in the knowledge that WIS are working in the background to get your mortgage approved. WIS. Online mortgages made simple.
Next on the list, we've got direct debit details. Why do we need direct debit details?
So gone are the days where you go to the bank and give them a check and say, here's my mortgage payment, right? That doesn't happen anymore. So the banks will want you to give your direct debit details. You can't set up your own standing order. One of the conditions of the mortgage will be that you pay by direct debit, right? So they will need your direct debit details for sure every month to take the money out of the account.
Thanks, Ifti. Next we've got on the list is the property details and estate agency details.
Yeah, of course. So if it's a purchase, they will need estate agent's details. Or if it's a new build, they will need, the builder's details, because that's the one they're going to contact to book the valuation, right? So they will need that. But obviously, if it's a rental property, again, they'll need estate agent's details if you're renting through an estate agent, because they're the ones who will arrange the viewing for the property when it comes to valuation, right? So for that reason, they will want that. But if it's your own property and, if you're doing a remortgage, it's a different story. They'll just need your details because they're coming to your house, right? So they will want somebody to contact, right? So you will be the ideal person. So that's probably the best thing to do. Sometimes people don't use estate agents for the sale. Sometimes they don't use estate agents for things like renting out as well. It's becoming more and more common now because of, these online channels that you have, right? You do your own sale or you rent it out yourself sort of thing, right? So with that, nowadays, you can give details, but if you're going through the traditional method, which most people do, you will need the estate agent's details.
Yeah, thanks, Ifti. Number 7, solicitor details.
Yeah, I mean, if you're buying a new house or even if you're remortgaging to another lender, you generally need solicitor details, right? So especially with a new house, you will have to use your own solicitors because banks won't give you free solicitors. So because of that, you need the solicitor's details. Often, they are the contact person with the solicitor because some solicitor firms have about 100 solicitors, right? So you'll need the contact person, their address, their postcode, phone number, email, things like that. If you are doing a remortgage, sometimes banks give you free solicitors, right? So if they are giving you free solicitors, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to give solicitor details. But otherwise, if they are not giving you free solicitors and maybe they're giving you some cash back, then you have to find another solicitor as well, right? So you'll need solicitor details, but just make sure that that particular solicitor is in the panel, right? Because often we find when you go to especially a smaller bank, they only have limited solicitors that they work with, right? So you just need to make sure that that solicitor is on the panel of the bank, right? If not, it's not the end of the world. Quite often you can register yourself with the bank, right? Subject to you meeting the bank's sort of enrollment criteria, you can get onto their panel, right? But it's always easier to get a solicitor who is sort of in their panel, right? So, yeah.
Thank you, Ifti. So let's kind of now talk about contractors and self-employed, because there's a few extra things, isn't there, that they kind of need to provide, which a regular employed person won't. So we've got tax overviews here.
Yeah, so if you look at a contractor, often they want your contract, right? And they want your CV sometimes, right? Because the other day, one of my clients said, are you going to offer me a job, right? Is that why you're asking me for the CV? But it's not, right? Because if you're a contractor, sometimes you've got to prove that you have been a contractor for a while. So you need to prove that, they want to look at your work history as a contractor. So they often ask your CV as well, right? They will ask for your tax returns. They want to make sure you're paying tax, right? And they will ask for your tax overviews, right? The SA 302s or your tax return summary will show how much tax you need to pay, right? And how it's made up of. And tax overview will show the tax being paid, right? Because again, we find sometimes clients come and say, look, I earn £50,000. But then when you look at the tax overview, they have not paid the tax, right? So HMRC is not going to be happy about that, right? Because you have not paid your tax, right? So you just need to make sure that you're paying the right amount of tax as well for you to be sort of 100% sure that the banks are happy, right? So just make sure all your taxes are paid, right? So that's something that they look at. Obviously, over the last few years, something called an inside R35 contract has emerged. So if you're inside R35, they will ask for your contract, plus they will look at your pay slips coming out of an umbrella company, right? Because quite often they work through an umbrella company. So they will ask for the umbrella company pay slips, right? Depending on the bank, quite often they ask for 3 months pay slips. Sometimes they ask for more. Sometimes, based on the bank's criteria, they will ask you for a whole year's pay slip, right? So if you're getting paid weekly for a whole year, 52 pay slips, right? I mean, that's quite rare, but I have seen that happen, right? So they will ask for that as well on top of the other stuff,
And sometimes they also ask for the contract between you and
yes, that's right. That happens if you're within a 35. So you can have two contracts, right? Because sometimes you have a contract between your end client and the agency, and then the other contract between the agency and your umbrella company. And there'll be another contract between your umbrella company and you, right? So sometimes they ask more than one contract to make sure that all the numbers really add up, right? So that's what they will ask, right? So yeah.
Thanks, Ifti. And then what about if you're self-employed? What's the differences what extra documents will they need there?
So self-employed is people who work for their own business, right? So you can either be a company director or you can be proper self-employed, meaning you're trading under your name, right? So a sole proprietor or partner can be self-employed as well, right? So those three are the categories you normally find with self-employed. Now, if you're a company director, they will want to see your company accounts. And if you're self-employed, like a partner, or if you're a sole proprietor, they will want to see your business accounts as well, right? This is not bank statements. This is your business accounts to show your profit and loss, right? So they will look at that. They will ask for your SA 302s and the tax overviews. So all these sort of needs to match, right? So that's what they're after. So they will look at that as well. On top of that, they will want to look at your business bank statements, right? So they will ask for 3 months business bank statements, right? So because they want to make sure that your business is making money, right? Because your accounts might be 6 months old, right? At that time, you may have been making good money, but now 6 months later, you might not be making money, right? So your affordability is based on your accounts, right? But they'll want to see that trend continue. So they will ask for your bank statements for 3 months. If they're not happy, they might even ask for 6 months from you. So you'll have to be ready with that kind of information as well if you're self-employed.
Yeah, thank you, Ifti. So we've now got to additional things. So let's just talk through some of the other things that you'll have to sort of tell us when we make our application for you guys.
If you're employed, they definitely want your pay slips. Again, with underwriting, you're never sure what they will need, right? They just have a standard list. Like if you go to bank A, they will have a standard list. But then when you apply, if the underwriter wants to verify something further, what they'll do is they will ask for more details, right? if you give 3 months pay slips and they're not comfortable with what they see, they say, can I have 3 more months, right? So they could ask that question. So they will. So if somebody just started work and have 3 months pay slip, they sometimes write to the employer and say, okay, can you just confirm that this person has been working with you for 3 months and you don't have a problem that person working with you and there's a foreseeable future for that person in that company. So they might do things like that as well. So those we don't know, right? So, these lists can get silly, but, we generally stick to what is required by the bank. But if the bank requires something more, obviously, we will tell clients, right? But in general, this is what you need.
Yeah. Such things like 3 years address history, national insurance number sometimes, current employer details, those are the things that might come up, right?
Yeah, that's right. So so very likely they will ask those questions anyway, but that's sort of your advisor would ask you those questions, right? Because they will want to verify certain things. So they will ask you for your national insurance number. Sometimes they'll ask soft facts like, okay, how many kids have you got? That kind of questions as well, because sometimes banks like to know what your background is, right? So there will be some soft stuff that they will ask you about as well, yes.
And the next thing we wanted to mention is something called getting your documents certified. This might be something that you're asked to do, isn't it, FD?
Yeah, more and more banks want your documents certified by a third party. Some banks are okay, they allow you to do electronic verification, but still, some of the banks will say, can you please go to the post office and get your documents certified, right? It's still very common. Quite often clients say, why would I have to do that, right? But, they just want a third party to verify your documents, right? I know in exceptional cases, they have well up people like a solicitor or somebody to verify the documents as well, right? But often it's post office that you have to go to verify the documents, right? I mean, unfortunately, post office might charge you something like £10 or whatever it is. I'm not sure, but something in that region. But they'll be more than happy to sign off your documents. They're just verifying that they've seen your documents. That's all. Yeah.
Thanks, Ifti. Is there anything else you wanted to add to the video today?
Yeah, obviously, like I said, documents could get crazy with certain lenders or type of application, or depending on the underwriter who's looking at it, right? So it could get complicated, right? So I think it's always best to speak to some kind of advisor, right? If you're planning to buy a house in 6 months, plan your documents now, right? Because the last minute you don't want to realize that I need 2 forms of ID and I only have one because my passport has just expired, right? So that'll be a horrible situation to be in, right? So these kind of things you can plan in advance, right? So it's always best to speak to somebody early enough, right? So that, you're ready, right? Because like I said, could be anything, right? Because I'll just use another example. One of my clients, his parents is gifting him money, right? So the money is coming from overseas, right? So if the money is coming from overseas, the rules are slightly different, right? Banks want to see something called audit trail, how that money came from the overseas bank account to your bank account, right? So they'll want to see that audit trail. So it could be different, right? So just because your friend's parents gave them money and they were looked at in a different way, it might be slightly different for you. It could be because of the lender as well, because each lender is different, right? Their rules on these things can be different. Yeah. It's always good to sort of seek some advice upfront, right? So that you're planning, right? Because that's the most important thing. The last thing you want is find your dream home and then realize because of something really silly which could have been avoided, you missed out, and because of that you lose in the house, right? So therefore it's always good to plan these in advance. So it's always best to speak to an advisor as soon as possible.
Yeah, definitely. And I also just wanted to add on to that because of the situation at the moment, it seems like the rates are changing quite rapidly. We'll do what we can to help you, ensure that you get the rate that we've sort of provided you with. But if you've got all of those documents ready to go, once you've got the offer accepted, then we can submit the case because everything's ready. Whereas sometimes what happens is people get the offer accepted, then they ask for what documents they need, and then that's like a 2-week process or week process. And then sometimes, unfortunately, what's happening at the moment is the rates are changing in that time frame. So I would definitely say the quicker that you can get some of these documents together, before you've even found your property, that might be better, and especially moving forward with the rates changing so frequently. Thank you again for joining us today. I just wanted to put a reminder out there that these points may or may not be applicable to everybody, so please do check with an advisor if they're suitable for you. And if you don't have an advisor, I will leave our WS contact details below, as we are always more than happy to help. A little reminder that as a mortgage is secured against your home or property, it may be repossessed if you do not keep up with the mortgage repayments. Thank you for joining us again today. We'll be back next week with another episode of Let's Talk Money and Mortgages. Have a great day, stay safe, and we'll see you again soon.